Hi, this is True Diligence,
PI,
proud sponsor. If you're looking for a job
in the cannabis industry,
you know how fierce the competition is. Think of the character you'll demonstrate by showcasing your credentials at the beginning of the hiring process. A simple yet affordable way to show employers you're the clear choice. Visit our website at truediligence.com.
Move your resume to the top.
Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Welcome back to this week's show of the Cannabis Community Project. I am Brainstorm, bringing you your weekly podcast from the CCP studios high up in Denver, Colorado, exploring the business side of this newly emerging Colorado economy. Here to focus on the business, the patient, the retailer, to the geek in the garage, creating that next innovation in cannabis. This is the first media platform to help fellow cannapreneurs just like you build sustainable business models while living the lifestyle. Let's quickly move on. We have a great show lined up for you. We're going to be talking about sports today. What do sports and cannabis have in common? You'll find out with our guest, Mr. Drew Warner. But like always, we've got to start out with last week's short-term memory flashback relapse to just take a quick look at what we learned last week. It was a great episode with Brandon from the Motapot Cannibals brand store, coming up with all sorts of designs and innovation for the cannabis industry. And most of us are familiar with the concept of cookies and brownies and the whole deal. But did you know it was so easy to make it in home yourself? I mean, everybody can get a stick of butter, right? Glass of water, and that's all you need, and you're on your way to making cookies. If you didn't hear it, take a quick relapse right now, and then go back, take a full listen. Make sure to click like, share, comment, share it with your friends and family. Here we go. Last week's short term.
My name is Brandon Shepard, and I am the CEO of Extracting Innovations, and we have brought to the public a 10-minute butter infuser, stovetop butter infuser, as well as some baking mixes that are scientifically formulated to go with that butter.
Excellent. Is it strictly for cannabis?
You know, we do everything. We have made anything that can go into solvent, into an oil, can be extracted through this machine.
So you've been in business 6 months. You're the CEO. Are you also the founder and idea man?
It was actually a convolution of a bunch of minds that came together to have the one sole purpose of making this good and easy. Entrepreneurial spirit, I think it's great. I think it's part of this culture. We should really support it.
I think key point that people understand if they want to be involved in the cannabis industry, there's not necessarily the industry that is providing the jobs for people just to say, well, I think I'll go get a job in the cannabis industry, because most likely there's not. You're building your own industry within this industry, but you're still sensible enough to realize that you have to work another job until it gets going. So that really shows the true spirit of an entrepreneur.
We have put in so much sweat equity that we have basically built the foundation. Now we're starting to build the walls of this company. I always tell people I learned everything I know from the food companies I worked for.
But what did it actually take to get your business formed and consider yourself in business?
I would say actually it took us about $10,000.
Okay.
And a lot of help from a lot of friends that I've made over the years.
And where did that money come from?
We just each tallied in. I cashed in my 401k. I figured this was probably a better investment than that would ever be. So,
well, you're 6 months in, so what has your schedule been like?
Right now, it does not fill an 8-hour day. That's why we have other jobs. There will be at some point where the volumes get big enough and the logistics becomes big enough where, we do have to devote more of our time. And then hopefully at that point, the revenue coming in will start to supplement these other incomes.
Get that thing funded because people are telling you they're wanting to buy it. Why shouldn't you be funded? You're a startup with a product that's already manufactured and ready to go. You have a proof of concept in sales. You have some revenues. It's basically one of those situations where why shouldn't somebody throw money your way? Why should they be restricted?
Crowdfunding site would be really, if we could find one, would be a very optimum way where we could get our product, because we would throw back a lot to the people who donated. So to get our product out there as well. And so
I think you should be funded before somebody else with bigger pockets comes along and tries to take the market.
Well, I appreciate it. That's awesome.
And I appreciate your insights into your business and letting us know about how you're working it. And let's get your website one more time.
It's Eat Cannibals, EATCANNIBLES.com.
Excellent.
There you have it. Eat cannibals, everyone. Eat edibles. Have you ever made butter before? Have you ever made any type of infusion? Was the process as simple as that? Because if you're doing anything else, for any more than like $40, you're spending too much money and too much time. Technology rules the day, and it's time to make things easy. Get the Multipot. I recommend it. Let's move on. This week's show is brought to you by HMO Plus for all your growing needs. Visit them at www.hmopluss.com. Let's quickly get into our Twin News This Week in News as we talk about all the up-to-date social media happenings in the cannabis industry. Here we go. This Week in News, Twin News. Small change of format this week. Do you remember a couple minutes ago to this week's flashback short-term memory relapse? Did you notice anything missing from last week's interview? Yeah, the whole baking process of actually using the Multipot in the kitchen. We had so much fun, and it was so educational learning about Cannibals Brand Store and what they've been going through. We didn't get a chance to actually air the part where we're in the kitchen making the cookies. So here's Brandon and I in the kitchen making some cookies using the Multipot, boiling up some butter. So everything we need is here in the box? I don't need to pull out any other pans or anything?
Well, we're going to just make butter. But what I have here is actually some decarboxylated trimmings.
What does that mean?
The decarboxylation is basically, all it means is to remove a CO2 molecule. And when the plant grows, it grows as THCA, which is THC acid. You lose the acid by removing a CO2 molecule, making it psychoactive THC. Okay, so THCA is the precursor to THC. The best way to decarboxylate it is to run it through a heat treatment and drive off that CO2 molecule.
Now, this is required for everybody using the Multipot?
Yes,
before they get started?
For edibles, period. So what you're doing is you're actually giving you the highest potential of making the most potent edibles.
So a person can't go buy an eighth, grab the product from their little baggie, and throw it in there? They need to do this process first?
They could. It will not be consistent. This will be consistent every single time.
Okay, so that sounds important. So let's just step through it one more time because I'm a little slow.
Okay, so here what we have in this bowl, dried trimmings. They just look like leaves, right? That's all they are. This is the byproduct of the buds.
And it looks very dry.
Exactly. So what I did is I dried them for 3 days on a cookie sheet, preferably in the dark because light will react with the THC and degrade it. What I do is I throw it in the oven, dry 215 for about 15 minutes, and that takes out the rest of the moisture.
Okay.
I bump it up to 245 degrees for about 45 minutes, and that decarboxylates it. The other way you think about it is if you take your stuff to a analytical laboratory, they run it through a decarboxylation step. They do it at 400 degrees. When you burn it, you're taking it to the THC acid, to the THC, and then that THC is not being degraded even in that flame. It's getting into your bloodstream, so it does not become degraded in these types of temperatures. It's going to smell really potent in your kitchen, and that's more of the terpenes that are coming off, the flavor and odor compounds.
Smell of cannabis?
Yeah, it's not even cannabis. I call it a bouquet. It's very floral.
Is it a smell that's going to cause your neighbors concern?
Some might.
Okay.
This amount, yes.
Okay.
You do a little.
What is this amount that we're looking at?
This is probably 2 or 3 ounces of trimmings. And if you were to do, a lot of people just do their buds, like an eighth of bud, and it will not give you the odor that this much trimmings will do. There's a lot more surface area on this stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only part. Unfortunately, that is the one part of the preparation that is the stinkiest. The motor pot really doesn't smell like the other crock pot will stink up your house. This won't. This step will, but I do it all at once.
Right.
So that's why.
So
possibly.
you're making your base product here all at once. So you're looking at an afternoon. Maybe pick a Sunday afternoon when everybody's at church and in the movies.
Yep.
Get up a little early, and then you're good for X amount of uses through the most part on that.
Yeah, this one, what I do is then I'll grind it up, which we're going to put through the baby bullet. I grind it all up and then put it into an airtight, light-tight container. And this is probably about, you're looking at 15 to 20 uses through the motor pot. Just this. But I get it all over at once. I do it all at once, and now I just put it in the cupboard, and I have actually 3 or 4 jars with different flavor, with different varieties.
Okay.
So now I can pick and choose.
So you were talking about consistency. I assume you're not taking this stuff to labs afterwards. That would be rather expensive for an individual to do. How are you testing consistency and potency?
Most of it is anecdotal, using it.
So if my mom bought the Multipot because she wanted to start experimenting with pain relief and making her own edibles, how would she gauge her potency of what she's making?
Okay. So in the motor pot, there is a line in the filter that goes halfway up. That's my recommendation. Right?
And we're looking at just like a filter, like a coffee filter. It looks like just a strained metal, stainless steel funnel
with a screen in it. There's a little line in the halfway through. Now I'll put my trimmings today. We put trimmings up to the middle, and one will do you pretty good. So what I recommend is start slow, start low, use a little bit amount of material to begin with, and try half a cookie,
and then wait and see what happens.
Right.
Not eat the whole batch.
Exactly.
Because it looks like you just put maybe a tablespoon or 2 of product in there will actually produce a bigger punch than what it appeared. This isn't tea, in other words.
Right.
A bag of tea, for most people, they're thinking maybe, an 8-10 ounce coffee mug, 3 gram, tea bag. But don't do that with this.
Yeah. What's great is that, I eat a cookie and it's not as potent as I would like it to be.
Right.
Let's eat 2 cookies.
Okay.
And then the next time I'm going to fill up a little bit more.
Well, there's a lot of debate with edibles, with people telling you, well, if you're going to eat an edible, you can't smoke beforehand, or once you eat it, it's either an all or none, and there's no such thing as elevating your way through. To me, eating a cookie probably wouldn't do much. I have a large frame and a lot of fat mass, so I typically, will find things that are 200 plus milligrams minimum. Anything below that, I just know my tolerance isn't going to be affected.
Sure, same with alcohol, right?
Right.
So a very skinny person is more likely to get extremely intoxicated.
Right, fast metabolism gets to your body.
When it comes to laws regarding potencies of cannabis and driving and all that stuff, is that every individual's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's body reacts differently, so it's really hard to put a specific point to where this is crossing the line.
Right. So the secret is the decarb?
Yep, decarboxylation. It's kind of a tough word, so we're saying toast it. A lot of chefs, before they get their herbal extraction, when they do their herbs, they toast it.
Okay.
So we're just kind of trying to maybe coin that word as an easier way to say decarboxylate. So either toast it, decarboxylate it, whatever.
I like toasted. It sounds
like we're doing it at home, right? So let's actually, what we'll do is let's grind up some herbs. Stick of butter. Let's throw it in here. We want a quarter cup. Just take your knife and kind of cube it.
All right.
Just kind of stuff it in there. And you're going to get about a quarter cup of water.
So the water is just barely peeking above the top of the butter, which was pushed down at least halfway into the container.
Water helps push it through, so you might get a better, more complete extraction. I usually put it on the smallest and medium. An electric stove will take a little bit longer just because of the fluctuation of temperatures.
Now we're just going to wait 10 minutes? Or?
10 minutes or so. Yeah, it may take a little bit longer with the electric stove, but if it's a gas stove, I've got it down to 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, let's put that on the stove for 10 minutes.
Cool.
So it's bubbling out of the center cylinder, just like a coffee maker, like you would imagine. It's water being pumped through the grains.
Yep.
And then it's just slowly bubbling out the top. Yep. Any handling concerns?
Yeah, it's going to be hot.
Okay.
So just be careful.
The whole pot.
The whole thing is hot.
It's on a burner. We put it on a stove burner on medium heat.
Put it on medium-low. Take it nice and slow. Too high, it might just put too much pressure through and release the pressure release valve. The other thing is if you put too much material in that filter, and it's too dense, the same thing will happen. There'll be too much pressure and it'll come out the...
And if it were too high, like somebody turned it up to hot thinking they could speed up the process.
And it can. I've seen it do it in 3. But just the chemistry behind it, we want it to go nice. We want to get as much butter exposed to as much leaf in the reasonable amount of time.
Okay.
So too fast, you might not get all your THC. Too slow, you might get in some of those other volatile compounds that give it a bad taste.
And it is butter, so there's always a burning aspect.
You hear the steam coming out?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're pretty much done at this point. You can hear it kind of gurgling. Yeah. Do you have a little Tupperware, a little plastic Tupperware?
Okay, well there you go. It's basically liquid butter.
And so what's going to happen is, right, we added that water to push it through. So what we did is, and you can see it separating. The water's on the bottom, the oil's on the top.
And letting it overcook, is that going to burn or ruin the product? Or I mean, what is the art form here, or is it just science of temperature to this, time to this?
What's great is we found that the pressure that exerts through this machine is just about perfect. Which, like I said, it's all technology. No, just the way that it's been designed to express flavors through another medium. It's just the way it's designed. And it's, like I said, it's very old technology. So we're just using it in this aspect. Now, what we were talking about earlier is there's some new things out there saying that even if you crock pot it for 10 minutes, it's done. People that crock pot it for 4 hours don't need to.
Ooh, you talking about making oils or butters?
Yeah, butter is in the crock pot, the old-fashioned way.
Okay.
Right? So some people argue that you don't need to do it. Yeah, you don't need to do it for 2 hours, 4 hours. You can do it for 10 minutes and you get the same thing. The way this technology works is it all has to do with gradients and concentrations. So the weed has a lot of concentration of THC. The butter has no concentration of THC. So when those come together, they want to move together to balance it out.
Okay.
Physics
attracted to each other.
Well, the chemistry wants a balance, an equilibrium. So the THC will want to go in the oil, and the oil will want to go around the THC until it's in equilibrium.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, just like salt, right? You can add salt to water, and it goes, it dissolves. Pretty soon you add too much, and you can't get it to dissolve anymore. Okay?
That's its
saturation point. Okay? So what happens with the crock pot is that's what's happening is you put all this weed in this butter, and they sit there, and they come to an equilibrium. Now, the butter, as it comes up through here, it comes up through that column, takes out a bunch of THC, and it's gone. Well, the next group of butter that comes up through the column has no THC in it, so it wants to put more THC into that butter again.
And that's what makes it a consistent, in every scoop of butter you eat, it's going to be consistent across the butter because it's meshing and molding and finding its balance in every little molecule there.
And we're not we don't want the gradient to go the other way. Theoretically, if I put too much THC in the butter, it wants to leave.
And do what? Create like a cap?
Yeah, or a globule of THC somewhere else.
Just a THC blob versus a butter infused.
Exactly.
So it's a stronger aroma now that I can. Now it smells like we're making bread.
Yeah, it's a little.
It's definitely more potent now. It's almost indistinguishable though. There's something potent in the air, but you're not quite sure what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't smell like weed.
Right, but it doesn't smell like anything that can easily recognize either.
Right. Exactly. And if we were to throw that in the fridge right now, or if we were to put it in the fridge right when we got it, you would eliminate that smell. We do not want to get water integrated in the butter.
Okay.
And the reason why is that promotes bacterial growth. You saw a recall of edibles here in Denver by the FDA a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
That was because they tried to add the water back into the butter, or through food science, they were attracting more water. There's some other things they were doing that brought water into the product, which got bacteria to grow, and it failed.
So we're going to let it sit until it congeals completely.
I would just throw it in the fridge.
Okay.
And then in a half hour or so, in an hour, the butter will be solid.
So it doesn't have to cool naturally.
It can cool naturally, sure, but that'll make it faster. So basically, when that's done, you're going to have a solid puck of butter on top and some liquid water on the bottom. All I do is take a little knife and poke a hole on both sides, just like your grandma did with the old evaporated can of milk, right? Just poke a bowl and just pour it out in the drain, and all the water and gook comes out. All the THC and butter is left in there. You got a nice, beautiful puck.
Now, does the water have anything in it?
No.
Can I take a shot of it? Can I do a shot
You do
glass
not want
of it?
to. No. THC is not water soluble.
Right.
It's fat soluble. So if there's a fat in a water, it automatically goes to the fat.
So the water's dead water. There's nothing in there.
There is all of the dead plant material and proteins and cells and stuff that's water soluble. All the plant material is water soluble.
Does that have any
Chlorophyll.
health benefits?
Sure. It's like drinking wheatgrass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it doesn't taste very good, but sure, there
I'm
is
just
all the
thinking of all these
benefits.
potential products in
Sure.
the future,
Sure.
right? Like with the whales, right? Use every part of it.
That's absolutely right. Yes. Great for your compost.
There you go.
So
Composting, that's a big growing industry
Yep.
in cannabis. Composted cannabis water.
I compost all of my trimmings and everything. They recycle back in, and
So we're gonna let that sit until it congeals, and then it'll be ready instantly for cooking.
to do whatever you want with it. Yeah.
All right. Are we gonna make some cookies, or
Yeah.
should I just?
Makes cookies, or like I've put a tablespoon in my coffee in the morning. So instead of
Tablespoon of butter?
Yeah, tablespoon of butter in my coffee with some, it's just like cream, basically.
Is that enough?
Oh,
A
yeah.
tablespoon.
Tablespoon. Well, there will be 12 doses in there. This is enough for a dozen
12
edibles.
Meaning 12 individual cookies?
Correct.
Okay, so if I make, what does this make?
12.
Okay, so one bag of this is equivalent to one container of that?
One stick of butter goes perfectly in one of these
Okay.
with one egg, and it makes 12 edibles. And I've had friends that I've lost over these, right? Like, they were from Ohio, and they weren't used to the Colorado buds, so they had half a brownie and lost it.
Okay.
So-
well, I'll test it. I'll
cut one in half, give it to my wife.
Like I said, this is with trimming. So I usually, the buds, that amount that we put in with buds is about 50 milligrams a cookie, a brownie.
Okay.
That will probably be about 25 milligrams.
Okay.
Okay.
So trimming's about half of
the buds is what I found. Yeah.
Okay. What else? Do we miss any steps? Miss any? Are we at the end of the steps?
I think so. Yeah. All we do is wait and then pour off, and you're ready to go.
You're ready to bake.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm going to use it for.
Okay.
Since it's already in the kitchen as an appliance, what can my wife use it for?
The other side of it is we call it the maitre d' machine because it makes the most awesome maitre d' butter. You can put the most awesome herb flavors in your butter.
So she can make her own flavored butter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Anything that has oils in it, you can extract the flavor. What I did is I made a buttercream THC whipped cream. A coffee buttercream icing, and I put a little bit of coffee through it, and I put my buds through it, and I mixed the two butters together, and I had this coffee butter icing for my cupcakes.
Well, I like that. Let's think. You got both sides of the family on that one.
The great part
is
is
for Father's Day or Mother's Day.
Yep, it's the we think of it as the fondue pot of the 2010s.
There you go,
right?
bringing couples together and dipping buds into liquid can of butter.
Exactly. If you run rosemary through your butter and you make something with it, there's rosminic acid in rosemary, which will increase your shelf life exponentially.
Oh.
So the bread that molded in 4 days now takes 8 days to mold.
Okay.
Because there's a natural
preservative.
Right.
So for people making their own food products at home, not wanting to use preservatives, that's a good tip.
Yeah. And what's great about this too is that you can put just a little bit amount of rosemary in, and it will increase your shelf life. With a product like edibles, let's say you're selling them, it might not be a high volume product.
Right.
They might need to sit around on the shelf for a couple more days. That allows you to do that as well.
Excellent.
So still hot. Let this cool down. What you're going to do is, there's nothing in here. There's probably just a little bit of water, maybe some butter down here. You're just going to unscrew it, take that filter out, and it's going to be a puck of green stuff.
Yeah.
Just tap it out in the trash,
Right.
and throw it in the dishwasher, and ready to go.
That's it.
Yep.
So it's, dishwasher safe.
Dishwasher safe.
Excellent.
Yep, I run mine through it all the time.
Cool.
This week's show is sponsored by Dairy Berry's Recording Studio. Located in Arvada, Colorado, Mark is well experienced and will make your show, music, or any audio you have sound great. Take a look at dairyberriesrecordingstudio.com.
Oh yeah, the blues. I love the blues. I'm a little musician myself, and blues was one of the first that I started to learn. Hey, you know, I love shows like today when I can just hang out with friends and chat and talk about whatever. Today I have a good friend on the show, Drew Warner. He is my go-to man when it comes to sports. He is my sports nut. No, I'm just a nuglet. But he's the one that keeps me up on what's happening in the world of sports, because even though I'm not really a sports enthusiast, a fan, a fanatic, as some would say, he is, and we're good friends, and there is some relevant connection that's bringing us together today. In the world of sports, more and more there's stories coming out, and players are stepping forward, talking about their cannabis use. Cannabis use not for just recreational purposes. I mean, we know about all the stories that come forth where people get busted, but I'm talking about players using cannabis for self-medication, for pain relief, stress relief, extreme anxiety, extreme pain where the pills they're popping and the pills they're being pushed by their drug-dealing coaches and physicians are not doing the trick. They're actually destroying the body. So it used to be that there were athletes and then there were stoners, and there were two separate worlds. But the world has changed, and this idea of the stoner doesn't really exist anymore. But what we are finding is that athletes are using cannabis, but there's no rules. There's no rules that are set anymore. So there's many sports enthusiasts out there that follow the world of sports, and if you do, you know about these stories. If you're like me, where you're not really into sports all that much, then this kind of stuff, it might be new to you. But we're going to talk to Drew about what's happening in the world of sports and cannabis, what players are doing to medicate and mitigate their way through pain pills and long-term care, how sports are bringing basically the issue to the front lines of what is going on in this country with drugs, sports, privilege, and everything else. So sit back and relax, listen to today's episode. It's not really about sports, but it is about sports. And it's about all of us, really, in the world, because you don't have to be an athlete to be in pain and be hurt. You can be in a car accident, you can be injured on the job, or have something else going on. What we do need to look at is the fact that cannabis is in every part of the world. Cannabis is something that everybody needs to look at, because it's an issue that one day or another, we just may be there ourselves. Here it is, our episode with the sports nut and the nug lug. Enjoy.
Basketball Jones, I got a basketball Jones, got a basketball Jones, oh baby, People don't listen to me, you got to come and be set free. If you not live for me, you're not to be quickly just tipsy. Walking upon the street, gotta be on your feet. You know the police coming if you're tipsy. We got to be set free now. When I'm rolling down, down. We're gonna go jail cell now. No way, think you not coming up with my. You walking down the street to liquor store, got to pick up a party for you go. When you're rolling up quickly, how you rolling up quickly to be set free? What do? She goes down, down, down. be set free. If you're not living for me, you're not to be quick, you just dip. Walking upon the street, gotta be on your feet. You know the police coming if you. We got to be set free now. When I'm rolling down. We're gonna go jail cell now. No way, big, you not coming over mine. You walking down the street to liquor store. Got to pick up.
So just let me know whenever you're ready to start recording, I guess.
Whenever.
Or how does it work? You just record everything, then go back and edit it?
Yeah.
Okay, right on.
It gives it the feeling that the conversation's already in place.
Okay. Well, if you're going to have music going, you should have my theme song grow up for me, the Alcoholico Fumador.
Oh, but I would have to record it, though. And
All right, you can do that. It's very simple.
well, I was actually thinking of some hip-hop or rap for you.
Nah, that didn't really fit me, but...
Do you want to say who you are?
Yeah, my name's Drew Warner. I'm just Joe Schmo who loves football, but also, I'm interested in culture, society, politics, law, so I can apply different fields of intelligence and expertise to study the NFL and certain legal obligations and problems and lawsuits, health and safety issues that are going on in the league right now, and then also how that relates to marijuana.
All right. Drew, you're currently getting ready to go to law school, and your interest is in possibly representing athletes and sports players, and you also have an interest in cannabis. So we brought you on the show today to bring those two worlds together, to dig into your extensive knowledge of sports and something you've been writing about the last few years, doing some blogging and some articles for local papers in the Nevada or Arizona. What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Arizona right now.
And you, for the last few years, where you've been looking into the connection of sports and cannabis, and that's what caught my attention. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, not necessarily sports. I don't know anything about sports. The
sports nut and the lug nut?
Yeah. I'm not the lug nut. I'm the nuglet.
Okay, the nuglet.
So, Drew, you're a sports nut, and I'm kind of a nuglet. But my background is in cannabis. Your background is in sports. And together, I think there's an interest there that many people are either unaware of or slowly become aware of, that more and more athletes nowadays are getting involved in cannabis, not necessarily from a recreational standpoint, although I'm sure there's a large percentage who are recreational using, but there's more and more coming out about the medicinal purposes of cannabis with athletes. Can you give us just a quick background?
A red-blooded American male. I grew up in sports were my passion, whether it's basketball or football, and I played throughout high school and played safety in high school football. So there was really no opportunity for me to pursue football on the collegiate level. But whatever, I was voted team captain for the defense, not because I was a good athlete, because I knew what to do and where to place people on the football field pretty much. So my other players liked to play with me and enjoyed that aspect of me.
Excellent. So you've been heavily involved in sports, as probably most Americans that are watching football. You're involved in the players, you're involved in the activity. What have you been learning about from players who are starting to come out claiming that cannabis is actually their drug of choice for pain relief, medicinal purposes? What is your background in this? Because all I've been exposed to is just what the media has given us. We have some players here and there. And because I know so little about sports, I can't even bring the names of those players to mind. But I know there's been a couple basketball players and some football players who have come forward and said that they are using this openly for medicinal purposes. Is that your understanding also?
Oh, definitely. HBO actually had a segment called Real Time with Brian Gumbel, and they did a connection on marijuana in the NFL a while back, which was fascinating. And anyways, Brian Gumbel, after interviewing players in the league and whatnot, ended up coming to the conclusion that over 50 to 60% of the league's players regularly use the drug mainly for pain management. So marijuana use 50 to 60% is pretty significant. And the Gallup poll of 2013 said that 38% of American adults have tried marijuana and 7% use it. So when you look at a violent sport like the NFL and 50 to 60% are using it for pain management, I think that's pretty significant.
And there was just actually an article this week that came out in the news about a group of football players, ex-football players, who are bringing lawsuits back against the NFL of claims that they were giving prescription drugs without prescriptions. They were overdosed prescription drugs specifically to diminish their injuries and pain and get them back in the game. This was actually just a couple days ago. I don't know if you found this.
Yeah.
So
what did I think about? There's 8 NFL players who are filing a lawsuit against the NFL. And basically, the lawsuit is basically kind of what you touched on, that the league recklessly and negligently created and maintained a culture of drug misuse, substituting players' health for profit. So team doctors and trainers, well, once again, according to attorney Steve Silverman, were handing out drugs like it was Halloween candy to mask these injuries and to get the guys on the field to their detriment. The list of drugs include Toradol, Percocet, Vicodin, Ambien, prednisone, lidocaine, and the 8 players estimated they were given hundreds, if not thousands, of injections of pills over the years. And they're looking to turn it into a class action lawsuit of over 500 players to be included in this lawsuit against the NFL.
Wow. I don't doubt it, because you don't have to have insight to what's going on in a locker room. You just have to have basic knowledge of what happens when multi-millions, billions of dollars are on the line. We've seen this in other forms with companies who basically, to protect a few $1 million, will risk people's life. So the NFL, being a multi-billion-dollar organization, I would assume is functioning in the simple bottom line manner of players are expensive, players are an investment, they cost money, they need to maximize that investment until it's either burned out or dead, metaphorically,
Exactly, and players they're expendable. The average NFL player's lifespan, according to the NFL Players Association, is 3.5 years.
Wow.
So you're looking at a very limited period of time. And then just like you touched on with the NFL, the NFL's average revenue, or their last revenue for year 2013, was over $9 billion. The NFL's revenue is greater than the gross domestic product of 56 countries in the world. It would put them at number 137 of 193 countries. Their revenue is greater than the gross domestic product of those countries. It's a huge industry, and it's like a religion here in the United States, much as you know. I mean, people, they worship their altar of football from their couch on Sundays, and it's growing. The NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell stated that he wants NFL profits to reach $25 billion by the year 2027.
Jeez.
They're looking at almost triple profits in 13 years, and they think it's feasible enough to actually announce that in the media.
Well, this is why, I don't know if it was with you or somebody else, I've talked about this theory before, that when it comes to players and the high-paid athlete, that to the owners, it doesn't really matter how much you pay the players, in the sense of, do you give them a $20 million contract or a $50 million contract? Because the owners of these teams are not just owners of teams, they're typically owners of industry. So when you throw $100 million at something, you know that 60% of that's coming back to you in one form or another. Whether it's coming back in the vehicles that the players buy because you have ownership in GM and Toyota, or whether it's the returns that come because you have ownership in a real estate company that owns half of California where the players buy their homes, the clothing companies where it doesn't really matter. So in a sense, paying players extreme amounts, I don't know if it really protects them of how people think it does, where they say, well, you're only working 3.5 years, you got to make as much money as you do now. Because I think players probably just spend as much as they make in the time. So there was another HBO Real Sports that talked about the majority of, basketball players or somebody, the majority are filing for bankruptcy within 5 years after their contracts end.
Yeah, I think in the NBA, it's something like over 90%. In the NFL, it's over 80% that end up inevitably filing for bankruptcies.
Well, there you go.
You're looking at individuals these players, who wouldn't want to be an NFL player? It would be phenomenal, but there's a lot of stress. There's pressure. It's a year-round job. You got to be in tip-top shape at all times. You have to be on top of your game. You're always at risk of losing a contract or playing poorly and being ostracized in the media, and all these things. Medicinal use of marijuana to take care of physical ailments. You look at it also as on the mental aspect, and people are under these, exorbitant amounts of pressure that other individuals in society don't have to deal with. Well, is that not natural to also want to self-medicate and somehow alleviate that? And in the common forms of, let's say, alcohol abuse, well, you're going to be out of the league if you're going to be destroying your body. You can't maintain your body by abusing alcohol, But if you can find a potential alleviate for the stress and anxiety through cannabis, it's a very viable option.
Well, drinking a bottle of vodka makes it hard to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, how are you going to play football for, 3 hours against a group of gladiator men that are pure muscle, 250 pounds, and run as fast as a deer? It's just impossible. You're not going to be able to achieve that.
Was it you that told me that Lou Ferrigno drinks up a fifth of vodka every day or something?
No, the Incredible Hulk, yeah.
Yeah.
The old bodybuilder, yeah.
Right. I mean, that's...
They drink a fifth of vodka every night.
That's an extreme case. But if you're a football player or an athlete and you're spending whatever months out of the year in extreme training, you can't really drink a lot of alcohol, per se. No. Maybe you can. Maybe there's just psychopaths out there that can get, drunk on a regular basis and still wake up at 5 a.m. and jog and, run sprints and do everything else. But I would imagine...
Well, I think his name was Jeremy Schuck. He was the Pro Bowler, played for the Saints and the Giants. And anyways, he was just kind of a reckless individual. He'd go to Vegas, just get wasted, and, he'd feel guilty about it, so do 500 push-ups before he passed out drunk at the end of the night. But there's random individuals who do it, yeah.
And like I said, psychopaths. I mean, basically, if you're doing 500 push-ups before you pass out drunk to try to mitigate that, I think you're borderline psychopath.
Well, yeah, you're dealing with some sort of emotional issue, though, definitely.
But I think to become eligible for the NFL, you have to be somewhat psychopathic in the sense of you're an active, aggressive individual looking to tear somebody who stands 3 feet away from you, looking to basically knock people down to oblivion.
And you see, now you're showing your ignorance of the strategery of the NFL. I mean, it's like chess with pieces moving around, and there's a lot of strategy and anticipation of what your opponent's going to do. I mean, it's brutal in contact and physicality, yes, but it's a highly intellectual game, really.
Right. I understand. Line two people up and have them barrel each other over until the guy with the ball is able to throw it to somebody else. I understand there's strategery there, but let's stay focused on the idea that football players are psychos. I mean, that football players are self-medicating using...
they're beyond self-medicating.
That's true.
The NFL drug policy, the way the NFL drug policy is working is they test for illegal drugs, as in, marijuana, cocaine, etc. on the national level, but they test for these drugs in a 4-month period of the year between April and August in the NFL offseason, right?
It's like your parole officer telling you, hey, you're going to drop next Tuesday at 3 p.m. All right?
Yeah, it's just random. They pop in, and if you fail one time, well, guess what? Then you're in trouble, and then you're in these different stages, what they call it, rehabilitation or something, where you're subject to many more frequent tests, and then as it progresses, then you start getting suspended for 4 games, and eventually a year, which just happened a couple weeks ago, as I'm sure casual NFL fans know, to Josh Brown, a wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, or Josh Gordon, I'm sorry. And anyways, he got suspended for, I think, his 3rd violation of the league's substance abuse policy for smoking marijuana, suspended for a year. One of the 3 best wide receivers in the league, set records last year for, I think, 3 straight 200-yard receiving games, and he's gone for a year, And that doesn't look good for the NFL. They don't want to have their players be suspended, and they don't want these sort of issues to be happening. As a matter of fact, the NFL and the NFL Players Association are in negotiations to restructure their collective bargaining agreement from the year 2011. And they've had negotiations for the last 3 years to basically, the goal is to higher the threshold of the amount of cannabis that's allowed in your body, amount of THC, and at the same time, lower the punishment if you are found guilty.
They're such silly games. Why play those games? I mean, to say there's a certain amount is like a health inspector saying, well, there's a certain percentage of rat feces that's allowed to be in the donut mix. It's why play the games? Why not just say, if there's a percentage that's allowed, let's determine if it's a toxic chemical or not. Because if it's not determined toxic, why even play the game of 3% or 5%, any percent?
Oh, yeah. Seems
like a waste of money, and it's a ridiculous game. Are they making them PUAs and testing the percentage of alcohol in their urine? If you're under 3 beers, you can play, but if you're over, you have to sit out. Or I don't know.
No,
if you're getting drunk on the field, though, obviously. Do you have a dog in the game as far as drinking versus weed? What is your personal take? So as you're talking about what's happening in the NFL, let's kind of vet you out on where you're coming from. What is your side of the story?
My side of the story is I've been binge drinking since high school football parties, and I have the tendency to just borderline alcoholism. If I can, when I drink, I end up getting drunk. But so that's my take on it, is that I drink, but it's much more damaging than THC, much more damaging than smoking marijuana. And I've smoked marijuana and, maintained a full-time job, 18 credit hours, and straight A's in college. So, I mean, what's more damaging, getting drunk and then just feeling awful the entire next day and hardly even functionable, or having some smokes of marijuana and having a couple of hits or whatever you want to do, and then feeling fine the next day and feeling fine that evening and not damaging your body. I mean, it's pretty obvious right there.
I didn't mean to ask for an AA meeting. I just thought a simple I support one or the other or equally both was a sufficient.
Yeah, my statement in the game is I think alcohol is more damaging than marijuana.
Do you have more that you need to get out? Would you like to continue? Okay.
This is the result of honesty on your program. I guess you get belittled and ridiculed.
No. I would never belittle and ridicule you. I would be a little sarcastic and possibly at times a little browbeating, but never belittling. So going back to this general idea of cannabis and sports, is there any information, statistics you found of actual percentages, or is this all still kind of speculation from little media articles that come out and news reports?
On the actual cannabis use in the NFL, I don't think there's any hard numbers per se. I think the HBO report was pretty revealing. Actually talking to players and hundreds of players and seeing their estimates of, how many people do you smoke? What would you estimate the percentage of your teammates who smoke? You're looking at 50 to 60%. They came to that conclusion, and then you got just random guys like what was his name, Antonio Cromartie, quarterback for the Broncos, maybe Jets. And anyways, he came out and said, the NFL just needs to legalize pot because everybody's doing it anyways.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it started with the swimmer back in the Olympics a few years ago. Who was the swimmer?
Michael Phelps.
Right? Who tested or openly stated he was using or something, but he won the gold.
He won. He didn't just win the gold. He won like 7 golds or something outrageous. I mean, he's like...
Well, he's American, so
Michael Jordan times 10 of swimming. I mean, he is the swimming god. But I think he ended up getting... I think there was a picture. He went to some party in Boulder and ended up having a bong hit, and somebody took a picture of that, posted online, and then, of course, he had to come out and he's confessed, I smoke marijuana, whatever. But I'm not terribly clear on all that.
Complete assholes. There needs to be some etiquette. I think some basic etiquette that when you're at a party, there's certain things. I mean, Vegas established this 10, 15 years ago with their marketing campaign. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. They were smart. Out there, a couple of marketing people with the casinos got together and were like, "Hey, we need to come out with some messaging." So we need the same thing. If you're at a party, you're out somewhere in public, and you see somebody doing something, taking a bong hit, but there has to be some basic etiquette. You can't be an asshole and Twitter it and Facebook it and.
The basic etiquette that'd be nice to establish, but
Well, I'm establishing it right now. You and me, right now.
Okay, right now. Well, that would be nice to imagine, but I think there's always going to be some assholes and idiots out there who are always going to flaunt etiquette and forget about etiquette. So whatever,
Well, this really kills the myth that smoking cannabis or consuming cannabis makes people lazy and stoner hippie kind of. Out of it, man, and not able to function and, can barely spell their own name. I think it pretty much just destroys that myth when athletes are using it, because obviously the athletes in the U.S. are the best of the best in the world.
Well, I don't know about how them being the best and the best of the world at playing football dispels the myth that stoners are just kind of fried mentally, but
because they're using the drug and they're excelling to the point of being the best and the best in the world at an athletic, a physically. It's not like you're in accounting who smokes weed and he's the best accountant of the firm and he spins around in a swivel chair at the cubicle. I mean, these are guys who are, as you said, spending 9 months out of the year, 10, 15, I don't know how many hours a day in a physical exertion. And still able to smoke weed?
And they're doing it conscientiously and intelligently about why. I mean, for example, Nate Jackson, he was a tight end for the Broncos. He was interviewed in the HBO Real Sports. Anyways, this doesn't make him sound terribly intelligent at first. He said, I weeded as needed. For me personally, marijuana as a pain-killing alternative is very viable. I prefer it. Marijuana was something that helped me. As the season wore on, my body would start to break down. I was in a lot of pain. There's a natural runoff from the game that requires some type of self-medication for a lot of people. I believe they should be free to choose what that medication is, especially in a society that's becoming more and more accepting of pot. And then here's another quote from former NFL punter Chris Clue. He says, for a lot of guys, they see what happens with the older generation of players and how a lot of those guys got addicted to pain pills, which was just that, kind of where we started the conversation talking about the current lawsuit about the ex-NFL players, and there's a quote from one of the guys. Basically, he entered the league. He never did drugs once in his life, and he left as a junkie. He was hooked on opiates and pain pills. He ended up buying heroin in the streets. He ended up homeless.
Wow.
Tons of guys that are having liver failure, guys that are dying, guys that have just, become addicted to opiates and other pain-killing drugs, because they never had that. Anyways, this punter, Chris Clue, goes on to say, they have alcohol problems, and they're like, is there an alternative? Is there something else we can do? And marijuana is an alternative.
Right. And I think it's a legitimate alternative that is almost, is it undisputable or indisputable?
Indisputable.
Indisputable. At this point, because not only are they walking models of it, there's enough science out there from legitimate sources that back this up.
Yes, and in the NFL, the big problem, like the previous lawsuit I'm sure you heard of, was that it was a class action lawsuit. I think they reached a tentative settlement in 2013 for $750 million. I think it was filed by 4,000 ex-players, and basically the lawsuit was saying that the NFL misled players about the damage of repeated concussions and head trauma, and they misled the players about the severity of the issue and also displayed information about the severity of the issue. And anyways, $765 million settlement happened August 2013. And, you're looking at players like Bruce Smith, Andre Reed, NFL Hall of Fame players, Jim McMahon. And anyways, the judge just struck that down, saying that $765 million isn't enough to cover the expenses, nor the expenses of future players. So there's significant things. There's significant medical issues going on about what they call CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I don't know. I'm not a scientist per se.
Right.
But basically CTE used to be called dementia pugilistica, which was basically boxing dementia. And, diagnosed in boxers in the 1930s as punch-drunk syndrome. Mm-hmm. They show symptoms of dementia, memory loss, aggression, confusion, depression. Well, and
I might be punch-drunk.
Maybe, from all the times you used to get drunk and pass out and hit your head. Before you switch to cannabis.
Exactly. Ooh, that was a good self-righteous sniff there.
Anyway, the point about this is, CTE... they analyzed the brains of 12 former NFL players between 2008 and 2010. All of them had CTE. There was a player, Jim McMahon. He was the quarterback of the 1985 Bears, and he was kind of the epitome of the 80s badass, the headband and the spiked hair and just a rebellious, free-spirited dude and just an NFL star. Well, now you look at him, the guy's about 50 years old. He walks around, he shuffles around the house like an old man. He can't remember things. He has CTE, significant brain damage. You got other players like Junior Seau, who committed suicide 2 years ago. 12-time NFL Pro Bowler, just a phenomenal linebacker. And he had CTE. He ended up just kind of losing his mind, having these bouts of anger, depression, anxiety, certain issues going on, and he ended up committing suicide. And the way he committed suicide wasn't by shooting himself in the head, which would be a more logical way to commit suicide, or taking pain pills or something. No, he shot himself in the heart so his brain could be preserved for studies so they could study his brain and see if he studied the effects of what happened to him.
That is powerful, and I think that really shows to the gripping effect that true depression grabs on somebody, is that even if you can intellectually rationalize and see what's happening, you still don't have control over what's actually happening to you. So he had enough intellectual capacity to realize what was happening, but could not control it, where it still forced him to take his own life, but in a way that would allow that to carry on and be studied. So it really shows the grip of depression, true depression. Sometimes people...
How powerful he must say his brain damage was so significant from playing in the NFL. For small accounts, he was a happy-go-lucky individual before all these repeated concussions, and then he ended up just losing control of himself as a result of these things.
Wow.
And, as a result of CTE, and ended up shooting himself in the heart so he could study his brain.
Well,
But anyways...
your body, imagine a 300-pound man, a brick wall, running at you at somewhere between probably 12 and 20 miles an hour, depending, and running full steam into your body repeatedly, from leg to midsection to upper body, to head to not only hitting you, but then taking a second hit once you hit the ground. So in a sense, every time you get hit is like being hit twice, because you get hit once by the person, and then you get hit again once you fall to the ground. Falling to the ground is an act of being hit also. Your body and brain.
Like being in a car accident, man.
Exactly. I mean,
there's another player, Mike
maybe
Webster.
One of those little Priuses or something, but
or a Kia. I think the Kias are the ones that always failed the safety test. They're like an aluminum can. But
still,
player, the doctors actually said this. They said Mike Webster played for the Pittsburgh Steelers and 4-time Super Bowl champion. He's listed as number 78 on the Sporting News all-time greatest football players. And anyways, he played center, on the line, so he's having this brutal contact. And, when his playing career was done, he had dementia, depression, acute bone and muscle pain. He was living out of his truck. He pawned his Super Bowl rings and ended up dying at the age of 50. But his doctors diagnosed him with CTE, and then also said that his playing career was the equivalent of having 25,000 car accidents, That was the toll it took on his body.
Jeez.
And the Players Association, they have an excellent Players Association full of excellent leadership, and they've expressed to the league formally an interest in studying the medical research that has led to the legalization of marijuana in many states for medicinal use, and it believes that changes are needed in the meantime, regardless, which is why they're actually having negotiations of the current marijuana policy in the league.
Well, I mean, that's why the owners are against it, is because it's nothing but money once you head down the medical road, right? There's no return on investment once a player gets to the point where they're in need of constant medical attention. So the owners can easily give players, $100,000 cars and multi-million-dollar homes, because those things will go back to the owner eventually. But medical bills is the plug being pulled in the sink. It's nothing but a drain that's going to continue to funnel money. So I would imagine owners are thinking themselves when these players commit suicide, because that's one less person they're going to have to shell out.
One less potential lawsuit. Exactly. Well, I don't know if they're that quite that heartless, but yeah, their main desire is money and how to make money. They're all billionaires, and they're represented by Roger Goodell, who's the NFL commissioner. And they asked Goodell about, marijuana legalization around the Super Bowl, and he said, "This is something that has been asked several times, and I'll try to be as clear as I possibly can. It is still an illegal substance on a national basis. It's something that's part of our collective bargaining agreement with our players. It's questionable with respect to the positive impacts, but there is certainly some very strong evidence of the negative impacts, including addiction and other issues." He says, "We'll continue to follow the medicine. Our experts right now are not indicating we should change our policy in any way. We're not actively considering that at this point in time. But if it does down the road at some time, that's something we would never take off the table if we could benefit our players at the end of the day." But basically, they're going to follow the money. If the money, as in that future lawsuits from individuals who are suffering from traumatic brain injuries and prescription drugs like are happening right now, keep on attacking the NFL and draining into their money, well, then they'll follow the money to go ahead and look into a medicinal alleviate to the issue, which could be medicinal marijuana. And then they'll go ahead and follow the medicine, but they have no illusion of following the medicine right now. They just want to follow the money until they're forced to do so.
Well, this is how people who are very good at financially making money tend to be very stupid when it comes to public relations, because they're obviously very intelligent when it comes to making money, but they need some serious advice and help on basic public relations, because everything...
Donald Sterling, the Clippers owner, another owner of a franchise. There's a epitome of what you're saying. A disaster in public relations. Obviously smart enough to make money in real estate, but that's about it.
If they had the ability to forward think, they would look at this and say, so here's a commodity players are actually wanting to use that costs pennies compared to the alternative. The alternative is eventually going to kill them and come back and cause lawsuits. The other one is being legalized more and more widely and is showing no real cause of harm. If they were any real financial people, they would make a financial decision and say, we got to support the cannabis because that financially just makes sense. Players want to use it. It's practically free compared to the price of the other stuff. It seems to work, and it's not going to have lawsuits come back for accidentally killing players with overdosing them over the course of their career.
Yeah. Well, I think eventually, as the public sentiment of the country ends up turning more and more in favor of cannabis and marijuana, I think that when they realize they won't get a public relations hit by those who are anti-marijuana right now and be characterized as the marijuana league or something, I think they will shift that way. Or if it becomes feasible for them to do so medically and then legally with lawsuits and payouts. And there's another, also on the HBO, the Real Sports, they had they interviewed this Israeli doctor who showed how treating mice with head trauma with marijuana showed drastic improvement of their symptoms. And basically, the way it worked is low doses of THC would be administered 1 to 7 days or 1 to 3 days after or before an injury. And these things would jumpstart a biochemical process which protected brain cells and preserved cognitive function over time. Basically, it's kind of preconditioning these brain cells and preconditioning these things, almost like a vaccine against future trauma. There is some research there to support not only the medicinal use, but also the use to protect your brain cells itself, which the football helmet does not do. It protects the skull,
Well, I mean, there you go. There you go. If I were the owner of a team, that's all I would need to basically say, it's my team, I'm changing the policy. You guys want to smoke? Smoke. The second your jump shot starts to slip or your points per game goes down.
But there are no jump shots in football, man.
Oh, well, whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I thought we were still talking about Sterling, but whatever. I don't know.
Well, that's just it. I mean, players, they're not going to do anything that's going to end up costing them money. If they're abusing marijuana, hypothetically, if it's possible to the point that is really adversely affecting their careers, well, they're going to be in line for lower contracts. They're going to be a dysfunction in the team, and they're going to be screwing themselves. So why the owners, they got to look at it the same way. Then, if we're going to allow people to go ahead and do something to take care of themselves, ease some of their medical symptoms, it can only be for the benefit of the team and benefit for me financially.
See, because
I think that's the way it goes.
I like to always play devil's advocate. So if I were on the other side, or the side that was still trying to keep it out of the NFL, if I were advising these NFL owners and they had come to me and said, "Brainstorm, we need your help. You're the only person who could possibly get us around having to allow our players to smoke weed. What can we do?" I would think back to my Aikido training of using one's force against themselves, and I would say, let's do this. Instead of resisting the use of it and stating all these potential controversial facts of health and danger, why don't we accept the fact that it's a drug-enhancing moment, that when people smoke the cannabis that exists today, it actually hyper-focuses their abilities, almost to the point like using a steroid or another type of enhancing drug. So cannabis should not be allowed, not because of its negative effects, but because of the fact that it so positively works to increase one's focus and ability to think clearly and to be creative at the same time. It could actually give an athlete an enhancement, and that would be an unlevel playing field. Let's keep it out of the NFL. Thank you very much. I'm going to send them an invoice for that one.
Well, there you go. They're secretly keeping it out of the NFL for fear that they're going to have too many players on one team that will abuse it and just be getting a competitive disadvantage over other teams.
Well, it does. I mean, I understand you're kind of new coming into the smoking yourself. Is this correct?
Right.
So
yes,
you
correct,
may not be completely familiar with some of the different aspects of cannabis. Can I ask, what are you smoking? Or what type of cannabis are you smoking?
Well, I'm currently not smoking any cannabis, actually.
Wow.
But I am heading to Colorado here shortly, so I'm looking forward to something.
But when you have and when you do you just take whatever's available, or do you consume certain types?
No, I pretty much just take whatever's available.
Okay. So what you're going to find, if you're not familiar with the whole indica sativa thing, is that smoking sativas will actually make people become focused like an Adderall type syndrome. So people with ADD and very unfocused personalities, when they smoke sativas, specifically sativas, they will become more focused and able to function at a higher level because of their ability to become focused. And being focused is the human trait. That's what they say makes us different than other animals, is our ability to intensely focus on one thing for long periods of time and develop it. So when you smoke a sativa versus an indica, where an indica, yeah, I just said it. That's what they say. So when you smoke an indica, right, it can physically affect you. It can make you feel more physically lethargic or tired. It can physically relieve pain and ailments, but not psychoactively affect you so much. So you may not feel like you're in your head high like sometimes. Right. When you smoke a sativa, but when you smoke a more dominant sativa, it's going to make your head feel more psychoactively effective, and it'll give you that type of high type feeling, where people tend to be more creative and have sporadic ideas and be more up in their head type thing. So athletes, I would imagine, are using it for probably the pain relief of the physical aspect, which doesn't necessarily affect you mentally so much, I guess is the point I'm getting at here, is that an athlete could heavily use doses of cannabis, but a heavy indica, which would be affecting them physically from a pain relief standpoint, but not necessarily affecting them in their head where they're unable to focus, or vice versa. It may actually make the athlete focus more, because the cannabis has that effect on many people when you smoke the certain types like sativas. People get very focused and very...
Maybe many athletes in the NFL are actually doing that. Geniuses like Peyton Manning have that laser focus because they're smoking 9 months out of the year, and then they just wait for that, or 8 months out of the year, and they wait for the 4 months off, they get tested, and they start smoking again.
He looks like he smokes. He kind of has that little grin, like that side mouth kind of...
He's got a good sense of humor, too, you know? I don't know if you've seen him on Saturday Night Live, but he's hilarious.
Right? Maybe he's just high all the time.
Maybe.
Maybe that's
very pleasant.
The deep.
He goes with the flow of life.
Very good. What else did you find? Any other information that we haven't talked about?
Let me end it with a very interesting open-ed letter to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell from Harvard psychiatrist Lester Greenspoon. And anyways, I think he eloquently states the place for medicinal marijuana in the NFL better than anybody could. So he says, as both a medical doctor and one of millions of fans who enjoy professional football as a spectator sport, I'm becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the growing specter that many of the athletes I cheer from the sidelines will one day pay the steep price of developing chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, due to concussions and other repetitive brain injuries incurred in the course of their profession. Already, the NFL has offered former players $765 million to settle a lawsuit charging your organization with knowingly concealing a link between traumatic brain injury and pro football, an agreement later struck down by a judge who feared the sizable payout could actually prove far too small to adequately cover all current and future cases of CTE. So it's not too hard to imagine the NFL's liability eventually growing to well more than $1 billion, a staggering figure that nonetheless pales in comparison to the human toll paid in terms of pain, suffering, and untimely death among former players. To your credit, you recently showed a willingness to explore all possible means of alleviating the frequency and severity of CTE cases in the NFL, including the controversial idea that compounds found in marijuana could play a vital role in protecting players' brains. Asked about the very possibility, you said, I'm not a medical expert, but we will follow medicine. If they determine this could be a proper usage in any context, we will consider that. Given the severity of the problem, however, I think you and the NFL must go beyond simply following the medicine and help lead the way by directly funding research to determine if cannabis, including preparations with no psychoactive effects, such as those with high cannabinoid and CBD to tetrahydrocannabinol, THC ratio, can indeed provide significant protection against the damage of repetitive concussion. Already, many doctors and researchers believe that marijuana has incredibly powerful neuroprotective properties, an understanding based on both laboratory and clinical data. But unfortunately, the extensive research required to definitively determine cannabis' ability to prevent CTE will require millions of dollars of upfront investment, and despite the great promise many now see in cannabinopathic medicine, it's hard to imagine who else has both the motive and the means to provide such funding. Typically, a new medicine reaches the market because a pharmaceutical company pays for research to establish both its efficacy and safety, but it's highly unlikely that a pharmaceutical company will get involved in studying cannabis as a treatment for CTE because the plant and its natural components can't be patented and would therefore likely fail to provide an adequate return on investment even if developed into a successful treatment. The only other potential source of funding is the U.S. government, which remains inexcusably resistant to any clinical study designed to examine marijuana's potential benefits. Fortunately, the NFL's pockets are plenty deep enough to launch a serious, intensive research campaign designed to determine whether or not some combination of cannabinoids is effective in preventing the consequences of concussions. This would not only be a great public service, it's in the league's own financial interest, especially since so few other promising options exist for alleviating the problem. Attempts to improve protective equipment can only go so far without seriously diminishing the skills and capacities of the player. The helmet is currently designed as excellent at protecting the skull, but not its contents, the brain. And given the limitations imposed by physics, anatomy, and neurophysiology, I question how much more any helmet design can do to limit the frequency or severity of concussions. I also see little potential in further rule changes to adequately address this issue without altering the game so severely that it no longer resembles football as we know it, which means we must explore the potential for internal protection of the brain. This research will not be quick or inexpensive, but it must happen. In the meantime, I implore you to immediately stop subjecting players to drug tests for marijuana so they no longer face severe penalties for choosing a potentially life-saving medicine that can be used illegally in 20 states. Sincerely, Lester Greenspoon, Emeritus Professor of Psychology, Harvard Medical School.
Wow. Well, I think that pretty much says it all. I think that sums up pretty much everything we did talk about and everything we could talk about. That was a great article. Where'd you find that?
It was posted on Vice.com's motherboard as an open-ed letter to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell.
Nice. I'm going to go back and check that out. Well, that was excellent, man. I don't think we can top that with anything better. I think that's a perfect end to our little conversation here. But I'm going to have to obligate you to come back at least every couple months with some updates on more cannabis and sports.
I'll be happy. Next time we could tackle maybe the cannabis in the NBA and other professional sports. But thank you for the opportunity to brainstorm. I appreciate it and enjoyed it.
I can see it now. The show breaking off, the sports nut, and the nuglet.
The nuglet. All right, take care, lug nut.
Thanks for listening to this week's show. Make sure to come back next week. We're going to have even more guests lined up, speaking with dispensary owners, growers, business owners. Make sure to follow us on all of the social media, Facebook, Kush Common, Google+. You can listen to our shows live from the website or your preferred listening platform. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spreaker, even YouTube, all under the same name, CannabisCommunityProject.com. We'll see you next week.